Welcome to our daily reflection for this Sunday, February 11th. And of course, every Sunday is the Lord's Day because it's the day the Lord rose from the dead and defeated death and saved us. And so it's a day always for Christians of joy, of rest in the Lord, and of peace and of prayer. And today we have a great theme. I would call it the Great Exchange in the readings today. So we start with a reading from the Torah, the Law of Moses, and he talks about what's to be done if somebody has leprosy and how they're to be an outcast from society to protect society, to protect the common good. So the individual good is such that he's to be taken care of, but he is not to endanger the larger good of the people in general. And so he's to be ostracized and out as an outcast. And he's to cry out whenever he comes close to people, unclean, unclean, to warn people. And so we see that that's the law for the leper. And then we get Psalm 32, which is a penitential psalm of David about how blessed is the man whose sin is covered and whose transgressions the Lord forgives and imputes no longer any guilt. And so this idea of imputing no guilt and forgiving is an important theme that's going to relate to what Jesus is going to do. And I'll come back to the second reading at the end, but the gospel reading is Jesus encountering a leper. And I want you to listen to that story very carefully because we know that a leper is to be outcast. He's to declare unclean, unclean, lest anybody get close to him. And yet this leper comes to Jesus, and he comes to Jesus as Jesus comes to this village, and the leper says, "If you wish, you can make me clean." Now, there's great faith in the leper as he makes this this incredible cry for help, and Jesus does something. And of course, sometimes Jesus can heal somebody even at a distance, like the centurion's servant, or he can give a word of command: "Be clean, be healed." But now Jesus sees the leper and he has pity and compassion because he knows that it's a terrible disease. He also knows that there's not just a physical affliction to leprosy, but there's a social cost to leprosy. You become isolated and you cannot be in villages or cities. You can't be with your family. You're an outcast. And Jesus has compassion and pity as he sees the leper. And what does Jesus do? He reaches out and touches the leper. He didn't have to heal him that way, but Jesus chose to intentionally. Now, according to Jewish law, when somebody, if they're ritually clean, touches somebody who's ritually unclean, well, the trump suit is for the unclean throughout the whole Old Covenant. If the unclean encounters the clean becomes ritually defiled. But there's a new power at work in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. Now, when Jesus touches the unclean, it's the unclean that becomes clean. This is an incredible reversal, my friends. There's a new power at work in Jesus. He touches the leper and says, "I will it, be clean." And he is cleansed of his leprosy. Wow, it's an extraordinary thing. And then Jesus tells him, "See to it that you tell no one about this," right? "And show yourself to the priest, fulfill the Torah and the prescriptions of Moses." So that, why? So that that leper can be ritually allowed to access the presence of God in the temple, because lepers could never go to the temple. And Jesus says, "Go tell the priest so that you can go give worship to God." Jesus' goal of the healing is to reorientate and give access to his Father. That is the ultimate goal of Jesus healing and forgiving sins, which is the whole point of Psalm 32. Blessed is the man whose sins are not counted, right? Because they can now draw closer to God. And that's what Jesus wants to do with the leper. But then notice what happens after this. The man went out and began to publicize the whole matter. He doesn't obey Jesus' word of keeping confidentiality. And then there's an effect of this. As this report spreads abroad, it became impossible for Jesus to enter a village openly, right? Now, that actually is a reversal. We begin with a story with the leper who can't enter a town or village openly, and now the leper can because he's been healed, but Jesus no longer can enter a village openly. In other words, Jesus has taken the curse of leprosy upon himself. The leper is free and Jesus is confined, right? It's an amazing reversal. It's an amazing exchange. And what we're to ponder is how Jesus has taken the burden of this man's suffering upon himself in order to liberate the leper. Wow, a lot to reflect on in this great exchange. Jesus takes our own afflictions and their results upon himself in order to free us and to heal us. Wow, a lot to reflect on in these readings and how they all relate. Jesus takes leprosy upon himself. He takes the curse of the leper upon himself, and Jesus must remain outside the villages and in deserted places in order to minister. And he is clearly taken the place of the leper. Let's reflect on this incredible exchange that God gives us. May the Lord bless and keep you.
This daily reflection is brought to you thanks to the generous support of the Mission Circle. Join the Mission Circle to help Catholics worldwide understand, live, and share their faith. Sign up at missioncircle.org today.